Today is Wednesday, June the 3rd, 2020. June the 3rd reminds me of Bobby Gentry. It's 2 p.m. and we're going to start our meeting. Commission Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Chairman Briscoe.
Here.
Commissioner Waters.
Present.
Smith.
He was here a few minutes ago.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Brinkman.
Present.
Commissioner Eckert.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Good. Good afternoon. This is the third straight month that we've held our meeting virtually. That's worked pretty well. Thanks to everyone that makes that happen. I look forward to we can get back to meeting face to face. I miss seeing everybody. I want to share a few friendly tips for all of us to follow during today's meeting while we're using this technology. Number one, mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Two, please use the presentation only view if video conferencing to reduce the draw on your internet. Three, speak slowly, clearly, and at a loud enough volume level to be heard well. Four, there will be some hesitation between people speaking and hearing. Please pause and allow enough time to pass before moving on. Five, remember, nothing is perfect. If your connection isn't working correctly, please disconnect and reconnect. You may need to change from video conference to telephone or to teleconference per the instructions provided to you by the Commission Secretary. There will be several items we would normally do when we meet in person, but today, due to the individual remote meeting locations, we're unable to do. These items include our safety minute, recognition of special guests, and public comment period. We do, however, have a procedural item we will continue to follow today regarding abstentions. I will review our abstention process for you. There are commissioners that, because of land ownership or business ownership, business interest, or the lawyers may represent clients that may either have some relationship to a matter coming before the commission and may have a potential or actual conflict of interest to be considered or voted upon. The commission member will indicate if he or she chooses to abstain from voting or to recuse himself from participating in the discussion of that agenda item. If an agenda item is divisible by contract, call, project, or the like, a commissioner may specify that particular matter and then still vote on the remainder of the agenda item. This information is provided to the Commission Secretary by letter in advance of the meeting. The Commission Secretary will duly indicate the abstentions or recusals accordingly in the minutes of the meeting. Madam Secretary, have the necessary letters been prepared?
They have.
Thank you. First item of business on the agenda is the consideration of minutes of the regular meeting we held on May 6, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion and a second for approval?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have we already approved the minutes?
We need to vote. You got a motion and a second, and now we need to vote.
Well, he said his motion was as to the consent agenda, not the minutes.
Oh, it is the minutes.
I'm sorry, it was, Pam.
Yeah,
Mayor.
Okay, well, we're going to vote on consideration of the minutes, okay?
I withdraw my motion on the consent agenda and make a motion that we approve the minutes from the meeting on May 6, 2020.
There we go.
Second.
All right. And somebody seconded it. Is there discussion on that? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, the minutes are carried, the minutes are approved. Next, we move on to the consideration items on the consent agenda. Now, is now the time for that motion? Greg?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. Next business item is the consideration of items, wait a minute, we said that. I want to take a moment to point out a couple of items on the consent agenda that we just approved. Once again, we have resolutions for people we want to recognize and are unable to formally present their resolutions to them today. So I want to share a little bit about them and thank them for their service. Sally Oxenhandler worked for MoDOT for over 16 years, serving the public in various communications roles for the department. Most recently, as communications director. Sally, thank you for keeping the public well informed. Debbie Rickard ensured the department used its resources wisely for more than 17 years. Debbie, thank you for your service. Several years ago, Director McKenna kept explaining to us that there will come a time soon that MoDOT's senior leaders will start retiring. I would say we're well into that time period. I appreciate the advance efforts of the department to prepare the next generation of leaders to fulfill the responsibilities of these positions as they are vacated due to those well-earned retirements. Now then, now move into non-action items, and the next order of business is committee reports, and Commissioner Waters serves as chair of the audit committee, and Commissioners Brinkman and Ecker also serve on the audit committee. Commissioner Waters, do you have a report?
I do. The audit committee met on Monday. First thing we did was we met with the auditors from BKD about the fiscal year 20 financial statement audit. They're going to get started on that right away and work on it through the year. That's an audit that's required by state statute and also by the commission bond agreements. So they're going to go to work. It's going to be a little different this year with all the social distancing, but we talked about that, and I think sounds like they're going to do a good job and be able to get this done. So we also reviewed the fiscal year 2021 internal audit plan, and that's the internal audit that our staff does each year. We identified all the different audits that they'll be conducting through the next fiscal year. And then finally, our next audit committee meeting will be in November.
Good, thanks. Commissioner Waters and I serve as co-chairs of the legislative committee, and he will give today's report.
Well, Jay loaded me up on this one, so Greg, you have to bear with me. The legislature's been pretty
Clock's
busy.
running.
The legislature's been pretty busy. They ended their session on May 15th, and you remember they suspended activities for 5 weeks during the session because of the COVID-19. But they did come back in April to
We lost you, Tom.
Oh, God.
I didn't mean to cut him off that early.
Correct.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Have
You want to do the MTFC, Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Smith serves as president of the MTFC,
I think they're gonna do.
and Commissioner Waters is a board member, along with Commissioner Ecker, and Commissioner Smith will provide that report for us
Thank you,
today.
Mr. Chairman. I do not have a report this month. Our next meeting is scheduled for August. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is Commissioner Waters back on? Okay, Commissioner Waters, I'm assuming you
Well-
weren't quite, I'm assuming you weren't quite through with your report on the
No,
legislative.
I was just getting started. So, I was just getting into
Continue,
some of the
please.
things that the legislative proposals that they did work on, including the MoDOT budget. And we need to give Brenda Morris, our CFO, and Patrick a big thank you for the work that they did with the House and Senate to get the budget passed. Brenda's going to talk more about the budget here in just a little bit. So in the session, we did get some favorable responses to the budget, but we also lost some of the gains that we've made in the past. So just it's kind of a win and lose situation. A couple of the items, the commission agenda that did not pass that we were pushing for. One was limit the use of cell phones while driving to try to help with the distracted driving. That did not pass. And the other was to try to increase the vehicle registration fees by using the miles per gallon versus the horsepower fees. And again, that didn't pass. There were a couple of items that did pass. The legislature extended the sunset provision, authorizing the transfer of jet fuel sales tax to the Aviation Trust Fund. And that's a fund that provides general use funding for Missouri's airports. They extended that to December 31st of 2033. They also limited increased weight limits on Missouri roads and bridges by restricting large fire trucks that can weigh over 80,000 pounds. This will save wear and tear on Missouri infrastructure, and it's going to save millions of dollars that would have been used for implementing a signing program to identify the weight limits on these trucks. One kind of noteworthy proposal was the expanding the Public-Private Partnership Transportation Act. This related to the tube transportation, or as most of us know it as the Hyperloop, the Elon Musk project. It's a high-speed system that uses pressurized pods to carry passengers or freight. There's some detail on that. The legislation made it projects are eligible to be financed, constructed, and operated under public-private partnerships, the PPPs. However, state road funds cannot be used for this type of technology, and it cannot be erected on state-owned right-of-way along I-70. A few of the things that our MoDOT folks worked on to prevent from passing, they spend quite a bit of time over there talking and educating the legislators. One of them was a bill that would have abolished the Highway Commission. So we're glad we got that one stopped. One reduced the number of the commissioners on the Emperor's Board. And then there was one about the life cycle cost proposal, which would have negatively impacted our asset management plan and would have made it maintain the system difficult. There was an item that passed that MoDOT opposed, the motorcycle helmet law. This law, if signed in, or this bill, if signed into law by the governor, would allow those over 26 years old to ride motorcycles in the state with no helmet. They would, however, have to be covered by health insurance or some other policy to cover the person for possible injuries. Also included was it prevents a city or state or city or county from passing the local ordinance requiring helmets. MoDOT believes this is going to cost more lives, and so we're requesting that the governor veto the bill So we'll see what happens with that. If the governor does pass the bill, it will take effect on August 28th. Finally, the annual veto session is scheduled for September 16th. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that lengthy and good report.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir?
I have a question either for probably Patrick or Jay on this public-private transportation act for this Hyperloop deal. It's tied to some other bills. Am I correct or incorrect on that?
It's tied to an existing standalone provision of law that's been in effect for about 20 years. There's been a public-private partnership law, so what they did is amended that to include the category of tube transport into that category. That's really basically all that was done. And we have not utilized, to my knowledge, that P3 statute. I know there have been a couple attempts, but the financial intermediation piece didn't work out favorably on a couple of attempts in the past. So it's authorizing language. It's not mandating this provision, or it's authorizing the potential of a creation of a P3 for the purpose of developing Hyperloop, but it does not mandate that the commission start developing it.
Okay. You think the governor will sign that bill?
Yeah, it was part of an omnibus transportation bill that did have some other provisions in it, some of which were mentioned in the in Commissioner Waters' report. So they do a lot of times couple a lot of these provisions together, particularly in the last week or so of session, and they had a great need for that this year.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I serve on the MPERS board along with Commissioners Smith and Brinkman, and today I will provide the report, which is very brief. It is that the next board meeting is scheduled for June 18th. And Director McKenna, would you like to comment further on this, on the MPERS?
I would, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one thing that I'd like to do, and maybe this is a practice we can begin. It's something that might be considered redundant by some, but I'd like to submit for the record here as part of our report the meeting minutes from the meetings of both of the past two Februaries, so February 2019 and February 2020. There are details in here that I think employees of MoDOT should understand and read. And it also does highlight the outcome of several votes that were not unanimous. And I think that's good for membership to understand as well.
Okay, those minutes will be included in our record unless someone has an objection. So they will be.
Great.
Anything further?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Now it's time for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to start by saying a big thank you to the Commission for your forbearance during this period of time. I know these meetings are a little inconvenient, but I think they are working well, and your willingness to work with us is much appreciated. I also want to thank the MoDOT team in general for a lot of really good work, amazing work actually, making sure that our employees are safe, that the people we come in contact with and the public are safe. We're working and interfacing with our construction partners, and we have throughout the duration kept MoDOT moving. We've kept Missouri moving, and it's a team effort. From every single person in the department has done an outstanding job of adjusting to these times. Those adjustments have also required in the last week additional adjustments with certainly with public demonstrations and some civil unrest that have occurred. Our teams have been interfacing with partners across the state, and I'd just like to thank all of our teams, particularly our St. Louis and Kansas City team, but throughout the state. Again, just good response by the department to keep people safe. You know, our role in these is to make sure that people are out of harm's way, that if in fact roadways are unavailable, that we divert traffic and we coordinate with law enforcement officials to do so. Our partners in law enforcement have been very good partners, sharing information with us so that we can be most effective, and we really do appreciate that partnership. You know, with all of these things that are going on, certainly there are a lot of activities to deal with. We also are working on behalf of the state and MoDOT at the federal level, and trying to backstop some of the revenue loss. As we have talked, you know, there is a revenue impact here on state transportation revenue, just like there is on virtually every other form of revenue. That's in the private sector, that's in the public sector. There is really no area that is untouched here. And certainly transportation revenues with traffic volumes for several months that were down, motor vehicle sales tax revenues down, and declines in availability of being able to renew licenses and registrations, that will bounce back. But we do have a responsibility as an organization, as a steward and fiduciary of the state road fund, to take reasonable actions to buffer our ability to run that fund on a long-term basis, not just on a short-term basis. We've taken several actions over the course of the last 2.5 months. We started in March reducing our discretionary spending, and in some weeks have reduced it by as much as 80%. That's hard work on the part of our team, responding to do that and deferring some necessary purchases in light of the circumstances that we're under. We've put all hiring and other personnel actions under executive review. We haven't frozen any hiring action, but it is a high standard right now to push forward. And again, we're trying to save road fund dollars and work our way on a measured way through this current circumstance that we're dealing with. We have also worked with industry and our partners. We have delayed advertisement on what is now about $360 million worth of projects. We have not canceled any projects, but we have deferred those actions so that we don't add to the burden on the road fund in the short term. And we continue to look for actions to be able to make sure that we are gauging this on a month-to-month basis, no different than any other enterprise, private or public, would need to do. So we have had terrific response from our team, and it's much appreciated, but it's also appreciated the support that we've received from the commission during this time. We know that so far there have been very little impacts on the services that we provide to the public, and that's really to the credit of not only our team at MoDOT, but our partners in the construction and consulting industry who are also going to measures to keep their employees safe. And we've been very fortunate in not having further cases of COVID-19 within the enterprise. And I think our actions to socially distance and use masks have really paid off, and they continue. I did want to mention also a few weeks ago, the National Association of Government Communicators recognized our Leadership in Action coin program with a first place in the special purpose product category of its Gold Screen Blue Pencil Awards. The Leadership in Action program recognizes those within MoDOT who go above and beyond their daily job requirements and demonstrate the qualities of a leader. The hope is that the program will strengthen MoDOT as an organization and foster a culture of leadership. The award ceremony was held virtually, and here's a video acceptance that we submitted. Hello, I'm Patrick McKenna. I'm the Missouri Department of Transportation Director. And I just wanted to say thank you to the NAGC for your inclusion of our Leadership in Action program into your award ceremony this year. We really appreciate the recognition and all that you do. And to all the other award recipients, I want to say congratulations. You know, that, yet again, great team effort on the part of MoDOT communications and several of our departments. We've had human resources has been tracking that. Paul Imhoff has been instrumental in the actual execution of that whole program, and it's going very well, and it continues on pace. So yet another national award for MoDOT. So we're pretty excited about that. In this time of year, we've done a public outreach and continue to make the case, but in terms of safety, we're in the 100 deadliest days of the year in the summertime. It's really known, this period of time, it's the 100 deadliest days of summer. It's the period between Memorial and Labor Day that historically has been a deadly time on our nation's roadways. During this time in 2019, there were 291 fatalities on Missouri's roadways. That's nearly 3 lives lost every day. Our safety messaging throughout the summer is to buckle up, slow down, drive sober, and never drive distracted. We need to reverse this trend. Even though traffic has been down 30 to 40% across the state for the last few months, fatalities are up from a year ago. This is troubling, and we do need to reverse the trend, but that is our message out to the public, and we certainly hope everybody's safe throughout the remainder of the summer. And to celebrate National Hospital Week last month, some of our Central District trucks joined other first responders in a Columbia procession to thank healthcare workers for their continued hard work and dedication. The trucks drove past multiple hospitals and healthcare centers where workers and patients could watch from the windows. To all hospital workers and first responders across the state, thank you for all you do. Here's a brief video that demonstrates MoDOT's participation. It's always nice to see our team out there in the community and thanking others for their service as well, and it's really extraordinary to see that happen. I think that was really appreciated by the folks in Columbia. We are, as I mentioned, we are working hard at the federal level. There have been a couple developments with federal legislation, both passed by House Democrats. One is what's called the HEROES Act, and that HEROES Act is actually it has a provision in it that would provide a federal backstop for lost state transportation revenue, approximately $15 billion, and it envisions the period between March and September of this year. Should that move forward in the Senate, which looks unlikely, that would provide about $355 million to the state of Missouri for transportation purposes. That put us right back in the saddle with all of the activities that we do. Provisions in that bill, though, were in the specific for the HEROES Act related to transportation were bipartisan. We worked with staff at the National Association level across both aisles, and came to some consensus on language and some flexibility, including the potential of upping the federal share temporarily to as much as 100%. That'd be significant for us to continue our capital program. And I believe this morning, there is out of the House T&I committee, there was what's called the Invest in America Act. Now this is the House Democrats version of reauthorization, and this was actually not a bipartisan bill. So we don't have the feedback in here from Ranking Member Graves and his team on the committee, but it's the first look at additional investment in transportation coming out of the House. As you recall, we had the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee last year passed their version of reauthorization, so a little less than a year ago. So there's lots going on at the federal level also, and to kind of bring that down to what's going on at the state level, I know that it's really important from time to time for the commission to get a sense of, from our senior management team, from our managers that are managing complicated business segments of MoDOT for a status update. We thought it'd be a good opportunity in the socially distant manner to do so. So we are going to have those team members present just very briefly a little status update of what they have going on in their respective divisions. I'm going to kick it over to Ed Hassinger for an introduction of that and to kind of run the drill. We do these internally on a monthly basis now, and it's a great way for us to share information as a team and to align our efforts and to work together.
Meeting is being recorded.
Sorry. Technical issues.
We'll wait for that to quit.
Ed, what'd you do here?
I'm not sure what I did. I didn't touch anything. So, Mr. Chairman, when Patrick was talking about the leadership coins, I remember that is about the last time that we all were gathered together to celebrate those folks that got the leadership coins. So, from days gone. So you can see the faces of the folks that are leading the department. But we're going to start with the person that reports to you. So Pam is going to start with the director's office reports. So Pam.
And I'm going to be the fastest one today because I do not have anything additional to report other than we continue to monitor the situation as far as our public meetings and how those will be held in the future.
Thank you.
We're going to go to the divisions that report to the director. So Misty Volkert is with Audits and Investigations.
Good afternoon. I wanted to update Audits and Investigations staff are continuing to work with one consulting firm and their independent certified public accountant to perform a cognizant review remotely this year. We have currently remote cognizant reviews in progress for 3 consulting firms. So we've got 3 successfully started and 1 we're still working with the firms and their accountants to begin. That's all.
Thank you, Misty. Now we're going to go to Chief Counsel's office, and Terry Parker is going to do that report.
Chief Counsel's office has been busy and working remotely with much success. We have about 150 personal injury or wrongful death cases pending right now, and about 15 condemnation and inverse cases that we're working on preparing for trial. We have an arbitration on a personal injury case set for July, and we have an inverse condemnation case set for trial in Camden County in September. That case involves potential damages of up to $5 million. We're working closely with our staff and our experts to prepare those cases. We filed condemnation petitions in 2 separate counties in the last month, and working with staff to conduct our hearings and viewings in a responsible manner with the appropriate amount of social distancing. Our St. Louis staff is working closely with the district office to file petitions to acquire property for Manchester Road project, which is pending later this year. Also, we continue to provide the districts and divisions with legal counsel and advice. That's it.
Thanks, Terry. Now we're going to go to governmental relations and Jay Wonderlich.
Well, Chief, it's like this. A wise man who told me many years ago, in order to be successful at MoDOT, if you don't have anything to say, or if one of your vice chairman of the legislative committee has already reported on your report, or the director of MoDOT has already given you a federal report, you need to just sit back, relax, and just sit there and look pretty. That man was Don Hillis, and so far Don has been correct. He's given me 20 years worth of good advice up to this point, so that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Jay. I'm going to turn it over now to our Chief Safety and Operations Officer, Becky Almaroth, to run through her divisions.
Thank you very much. We're going to start with Jerica Holtzclaw, Motor Carrier Services Director.
Good afternoon. So the update for Motor Carrier Services is we are still allowing heavier truck weights on our interstates and all state-owned roads up to 100,000 pounds that are in direct effort to prevent, contain, and mitigate COVID-19 virus. This is for such things as medical supplies and restocking the food chain supply, and this runs through June 15th. Also, the Federal Motor Carrier Services Administration is still exempting the hours of service for carriers until mid-June as well. So both of these items, the heavier truck weights and relaxing the hours of service, are in place so that the supply chain can get restocked in a timely manner and keep the motor carrier industry moving forward. And one last reminder is that our Motor Carrier Services customers windows, where we interact with our customers face-to-face, remains closed to the public. However, we're still available to service our customers through our call center and through the motor carrier webpage, as we have done throughout the entire pandemic, and that's actually gone fairly well. So that is our update for motor carriers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerica. We'll move on to Nicole Hood, our State Highway Safety and Traffic.
Sorry about that. Didn't have it unmuted. So good afternoon. I wanted to hit home with what the director said about the state of highway safety in Missouri. Given the fact that the traffic volumes were down on average around 35% during COVID, our hope was that the highway fatalities would be down as well, but that's not the case. The fatalities during the COVID time frame, middle of March to the end of May, are up 1%. Overall for the year, we're currently up 7%. I shared some information with the commissioners at the May commission meeting on work zone safety and TMA hits. Unfortunately, that trend is continuing in the wrong direction as well. Now we're at 24 hits compared to 14 last year this time. So not good news. Our division recently coordinated with the director on a letter to the governor requesting a veto on the bill that repealed the Missouri all-rider helmet law. So we have our fingers crossed on that. If this legislation were to pass, it could result in an additional 35 to 40 people losing their lives on Missouri roadways each year. And then our division is continuing to work with multiple state agencies and other safety partner organizations to update the state's strategic highway safety plan. The strategies outlined in this plan, they're intended to create a framework for reducing and ultimately eliminating fatal crashes in the state. The plan is intended for all Missourians, since every one of us can do something to make our roadways safer. The new plan is scheduled to roll out publicly in September of 2020. A draft version of the plan has been shared with MoDOT leadership and our statewide safety partners, and that's for comment during the month of June. And then we'll be bringing that plan to the commission in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. We'll move on to Natalie, our state maintenance engineer.
Good afternoon. Our maintenance crews have been out in full force, continuing to deliver the critical functions and following social distancing guidelines. There has been progress throughout the entire state doing patching, pavement repairs, striping, sign replacements, culvert replacements, mowing, spraying weeds, and some of the bridge maintenance needs are also starting to pick up. We continue to have weekly COVID situational meetings with our district maintenance engineers to discuss social distancing guidelines and challenges that we're having and sharing of best practices. The district and division leadership is making visits to the maintenance buildings, and we're always continuing to emphasize the importance of safety first in everything that we do, then quality, and then production. With some of the limitations of social distancing, it's not easy for our crews to accept that our production is going to be impacted because our maintenance employees are just so passionate about what they do and have such a sense of pride in the work that they do and want to see it completed through. But that's the reality that we're in with the pandemic. So mowing is progressing in the districts. We've done about 24,000 shoulder miles to date. The middle and the southern districts are progressing on the first pass of mowing, with the northern districts just beginning to start with their mowing. And that's due to the climate difference that we see between the north and the south of the state. So production to the mowing operations has been impacted, not only due to COVID, but also just due to the wet weather conditions that we've experienced over the past few weeks. The main challenge with social distancing is going to and from the mowing site, but the districts have been creative in altering their mowing patterns and have really accommodated to adjust for that. They've started with the minors first and will continue in doing the major routes secondly, in hopes of having the majors completed by the 4th of July. And then also just a brief update on our maintenance management system. All 191 maintenance organizations are entering labor, equipment, and material usage into MMS daily. So we have so much information that is just right at our fingertips, and it's really a true testament of the work that all of our maintenance work is doing. So that is it for the maintenance division. Thank you, Becky.
Great, thank you, Natalie. And coming straight from our MoDOT Emergency Operations Center, we have Chris Engelbrecht. He is the Assistant to the Chief Safety and Operations Officer over Safety and Emergency Management.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we've been busy, as you can imagine. So we're currently working on recovery projects and reimbursements related to 6 major disaster declarations that have been going on for a few years, along with gathering documentation for one new request related to the May 2020 severe weather event that had occurred. Our unit also continues to support our state and federal partners with ongoing response to the pandemic, and then most recently the statewide civil unrest. We're also staffing the MoDOT EOC, or Emergency Operations Center, daily, along with the State Emergency Operations Center at SEMA as necessary. MoDOT's been providing numerous resources, including message boards, channelizers, generators, and even some portable toilets to support Department of Health and National Guard at some of our community testing sites around the state over the last couple of weeks. We're also continuing to coordinate the statewide fire and law enforcement personal protective equipment distribution from our MoDOT warehouse here in Jeff City. On the safety side, our safety group's been busy developing guidance documents to help protect our employees during the ongoing event. We also continue to build out our safety programs and policies to ensure that they meet the or exceed the federal occupational safety standards. I did want to thank our district safety managers and also our senior management team for making some early morning trips to our maintenance facilities around the state to join in their morning meetings at their field offices. It's very important right now to make sure that our field crews that are still continuing to report to have the tools necessary to be both safe physically and also mentally. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to our Assistant Chief Engineer, Eric Schrader, to go over our program delivery side of the house.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ed. Yeah, we're going to start off with Brian Hartnagel, our Assistant State Bridge Engineer, to give us the bridge update.
Thank you, Eric. MoDOT was supposed to be hosting the AASHTO Committee on Bridges and Structures this week in Branson, Missouri, and that's why Dennis is not giving this report. He's the Vice Chair of the T3 Seismic Committee, which is going on virtually right now, so he asked me to fill in. So the bridge division has 3 underbridge inspection crews that are based out of Just City that typically are on travel status all the time. We stopped doing overnight travel on March 30th, 2020 due to COVID-19 concerns with finding suitable lodging arrangements and meal service or dining options for our staff. Because we're not traveling overnight, we are in contact with the Federal Highway Administration to let them know that some of our bridge inspections will be late. As of May 28th, we are late on inspection of 4 bridges. Typically what they are doing is traveling to the site during the day, doing the inspection and returning each night so they can stay at home. And this limits their ability to get to the corners of the state. So we have bridges in Dunklin, Mercer, Nottoway, and Cape Girardeau County that are going to be late. We also have June 1 is typically our start of underwater bridge inspection season, where we do wading and diving for substructure units. Several changes have been made to the procedures and the order of work due to COVID-19 restrictions. And we don't anticipate being late with any inspections through June, but don't know how that's going to go yet because we haven't gotten started. So that's all I have to report, Eric, and thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Dave Albers, our state construction and materials engineer.
Hello. I thought I'd start out with the status of the construction projects. So if we take a snapshot today, we have $1 billion worth of work remaining based on an awarded contract amount of $1.8 billion. And this is all of our projects. It also includes our design build projects. For this calendar year, we're 91.5 million ahead of payouts compared to 2019 last year. So our contractors got off to an early start and they've continued ahead of schedule. We started off by relaxing our working hours on many of our contracts due to lower traffic volumes. And we have since moved back to night operations on most of these contracts due to the increased traffic. The contractors have been cooperative in these adjustments, and as we mentioned earlier, they're well ahead of schedule. We've received 2 COVID-19 related requests for additional compensation, and those both involve steel fabrication. That's a small number of requests considering we have 400 active projects, but we're working through those issues now. So that's the construction and materials report.
Thank you, Dave. We're going to move on to Missy Stoodle, our external civil rights director.
Missy, I think you are muted. Sorry about that. My mouse wasn't cooperating. Okay, as you all know, last November I reported to the Commission the results of our DBE availability study conducted by Keene Independent Research Group. That study resulted in adjustment to the overall DBE goal from 16.05% to 12.45%. So anytime there was an adjustment to the overall goal that was that drastic, we were required to request from Federal Highway a mid-cycle adjustment outlining what our new goal is. We submitted that request to Federal Highway back in November of 2019, and I'm happy to report that on May 28th, we received the request to adjust our federal fiscal year 2020 overall DBE goal from 16.05% to 12.45%. In addition to that, that current 16.05% overall goal covered the period of time of federal fiscal year 2018 to 2020. So every 3 years, MoDOT is required to submit a new overall goal to Federal Highway. And since we recently conducted and had the results of the availability study, Federal Highway also approved our new overall goal for federal fiscal year 2020 to 2023 at the 12.45%. So that will be our new goal for the next 3 years. In addition, MoDOT started in April of 2020 letting, requiring all bidders to submit the DBE identification symbol within 3 business days of the letting. For the first letting in April, we received 100% participation of the contractor submitting it by the required due date. In the month of May, which was a little bit larger letting, all but one of the bidders submitted the information by the 3 business days. And then once we made contact with them, it was their first letting since the new requirement. And of course, we are in a trial period of doing this, requiring them to submit it. They did eventually submit the information, so we did get the information from all bidders. MoDOT will also be submitting an on-the-job training supported services RFP within the next 2 weeks. This on-the-job training supported service RFP provides money from federal highway to help train minorities and females in the heavy highway industry to work either for MoDOT or on our heavy highway projects. And we divide that money, which is $134,000, between 3 areas of the states, Kansas City, St. Louis, and then we consider outstate of those areas. So we will be advertising that for 3 areas of the state sometime within the next 2 weeks. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Missy. Next up, we'll have Michelle Kratzer, our Multimodal Operations Director.
Good afternoon, Eric. So as you know, Missouri is receiving CARES Act funding for airports and transit providers. CARES Act, again, is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act funding. So MoDOT will be administering $19.8 million of the $152 million for Federal Aviation Administration funds. And really good news, we did receive the FAA grant this week, so we'll be able to get those funds out to airports quickly. MoDOT's also administering $61.7 million in transit funds. The Federal Transit Administration is administering $194.4 million in Missouri. And I'm also really glad to report that $1.3 million of these CARES Act relief funds are scheduled for payout to transit agencies here in Missouri next week. So this much needed relief does not have a local match requirement, as you recall. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, we have Travis Kessner, our State Design Engineer.
Yeah, thank you. Design work continues on in a remote situation. Our computer-aided draft design group, our CAD group, actually monitors the usage of the design software statewide and can kind of get a handle on design production. And so our production levels are at the same level of when we were physically in the office, and in some cases kind of goes up above that production level some. So design work continues. Districts have done a great job delivering the fiscal year 20 priorities. I'll report on that later, around $1.1 billion worth of work. We're busy to setting up our individual meetings with the district transportation project managers and district design engineers to talk about specific projects. We usually do our field visits.
David Leib at the Associated Press. It's Wednesday afternoon. Just following up on those emails I had sent you earlier today and then also about a week ago, requesting an interview with the department director. Just hadn't heard back from you, but wanted to let you know I'm still interested in doing that and have some flexibility on the timing.
David, Mr. Leib, I think you're not muted, and your feedback is coming over the commission meeting. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Continue on. Just a little bit of highlight from our local programs group. We're actually going to hold off on the call for rural transportation alternative projects due to the federal transportation bill not being approved yet. We really don't know the target funding amounts until we actually have either a continuation of the FAST Act or a new federal bill, so we can't really move on with that. And highlight last week in Federal Highways Everyday Counts news publications, in result of Julie Stallmeyer attending a peer exchange, the results document, MoDOT's results document, was highlighted, and the safety issues for addressing runoff road crashes with engineering aspects. So thought that was a good thing to share with the group as well. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Travis. Next, we have Eric Curdy with Transportation Planning Director.
Thank you, Eric. Hope everyone can see me because I can't see anyone. But we've been working with our 20 to 24 step. Given no annual update, there's been some questions and concerns, and issues we've had to work through. We continue to provide guidance to divisions and districts concerning that and our planning partners. And speaking of our planning partners, we had a good meeting with them back in May. And we've set up another meeting with them for June for Director McKenna and Ed to speak with them and offer advice and keep them in the loop as to what's going on for all the MPOs and RPCs around the state to stay up to date. That's my report.
Thank you, Eric. Ed, that does it for program delivery.
All right, thanks, Eric. So now we're going to shift over to our districts, and I'm going to walk you through that one. So first we have the Northwest District. Marty Lyles is our Assistant District Engineer that will be giving the report. Marty?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. Really the first thing I want to do is just a shout out to really our MoDOT team. It's the district, but also the central office planning and design division, because we had a situation down on 36 coming out of the winter all across the district that we just had some really failing joints and really in bad shape, really falling apart. And so we had a project on 36 in Livingston County that we repackaged that and actually extended that contract, moving some other projects around to actually include Lynn, Livingston, and Caldwell counties to let a project coming up in future lettings to try and take care of those joints before the winter actually happened, because at this time we really didn't have any plans to do anything with that with this projects we had. So kudos to our MoDOT team for that. That was really great teamwork to try and get some commitments for the traveling public. And then the other project I was really talking about was our wind farms. We actually have 3 wind farms going on in northwest Missouri, actually 2 in Nottoway County and 1 in Atchison County. Some of those are starting to wrap up, but really those wind farms, as long as they're legal loads and legal limits, they really don't have any obligation to provide any monies to MoDOT for those roads that they damage as they come across here with their gravel and concrete trucks. But we've actually worked with them and negotiated over $2.1 million of funding just to take care of those once those things are taken care of. And when those wind farms are done, they're going to come in and do some resurfacing on that. So much needed work on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. Now we'll go to our Northeast District and Paula Goff.
Continuing the windmill farm theme, we have a windmill farm that is currently being constructed in Schuyler and Adair counties. They have 30 turbines out of 175 that are completed. We have a similar arrangement thanks to our friends in Northwest Missouri who have gave us a lot of good advice about the windmill farms that we've also been able to negotiate and are receiving funds to help repair the roads, and then we'll be able to do some more substantial work at the conclusion of that. But it's taken a great partnership with MoDOT, Motor Carrier Services and Bridge Division, as well as our maintenance staff. Maintenance has also been dealing with flash flooding response and flooding in the low-lying areas of the Mississippi River. And unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have some bad weather come through again tonight. But the MoDOT maintenance crews are doing a great job responding. In the construction side on I-70, I'm happy to report we're nearing the final phase of the Montgomery County Luder River Bridge. That is on westbound I-70. And that should be completed sometime this summer. And as that project is wrapping up, we will also see the beginnings of the design build project in Montgomery County for the construction of climbing lanes and some additional bridges there at Mineola Hill in Montgomery County. And they are planning to have the eastbound and westbound lane, the climbing lanes open before winter. So looking forward to seeing that project get started, as well as our westbound bridge get finalized. So thank you.
Now we'll go to our Kansas City District and Dave Sylvester.
Good afternoon. So I want to highlight a project, I-435 bridge rehabilitation over the Missouri River. Early on in the pandemic, this was a project that was awarded long before the pandemic, but as a result of a lot of the stay-at-home orders in the metro area, as noted, there was a decrease in traffic. So our folks took it upon the initiative to visit with the contractor, do some acceleration, open up some expansion of some of the time scheduled of work to allow for some longer periods of work time. And that's really allowed us to get ahead in the project. So as traffic has sort of returned, getting closer to returning back to where it was, a lot of those restrictions have been put back in place, but we're still ahead in the project. So I think that's a good thing to know of where that is. And we don't have windmills here, but we have propellers. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a little significant thing that happened almost in our front yard here in the district office. So if you're aware, we have the Lee's Summit Airport, but a plane made an emergency landing on our interstate. Not typically what the interstate's designed for, but in this case, it served as a very functional landing strip and potentially saved the life of a pilot, a local pilot who experienced some issues, couldn't make it to the airport, chose to land the plane between traffic and actually between interchanges, and brought the plane down safely. And it did make national news. It was something that was particular of interest, but not something you see every day as a twin-engine aircraft landing on the interstate. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Now let's move to our Central District and Michelle Watkins.
Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to note that the Central District has 6 Focus on Bridges projects that have begun work this month. This includes bridges in the Gasconade County, Osage, Miller, Camden, and Callaway County. I think it's worth noting that the Focus on Bridge project on Route D bridge over Interstate 70 in Callaway County will require the bridge to soon be closed for an estimated 3 months, with a single night closure on Interstate 70 in both directions, currently scheduled for June the 23rd. During this single night closure, traffic will be diverted to the outer roads. I'd also like to note that eastbound Interstate 70 will be down to 1 lane at the Missouri River Bridge at Rocheport, as repairs are being made to the pavement just east of the Rocheport Bridge. So the on-call contractor will begin work at 7 p.m. This coming Monday, June 8th, and will work overnight until 6 a.m. We expect that work to be completed in 2 nights, but the weather could cause the project to be extended for additional nights. Speed limits will be reduced there to 60 miles an hour in the work zone, but because this work is taking place at night, we don't expect it to have much impact to travel time, but some travel congestion or delays could take place. And I think it's worth noting that the westbound lanes on this bridge will remain open throughout the project, and traffic should flow normally on the westbound lane. That concludes the Central District report.
Thank you, Michelle. Now we're going to move to St. Louis, and Mark Corcoran, our Assistant District Engineer over Operations, is going to give that report.
Thank you, Ed. Overhead signs, the large overhead signs, are one of many things we have to maintain. These are typically in urban areas, and when I say large, they can be 40 feet wide and 10 feet tall. They're installed with cranes. So these are signs that we do a lot of contracting on, but we also change about 60 of them a year with MoDOT crews. When the pandemic hit, we had a list of signs we planned on replacing, and we could not replace them with social distancing requirements, and we started prioritizing our employees in other places. So as Natalie reported earlier, there's a lot of pride in getting work done. Our crews have found a way to install signs without risk of social distance or getting close to one another. They aren't quite as quick as they were before the pandemic, so instead of getting 2 signs a night, they are getting 1 sign a night, but they just started doing this last week. They're really proud to be able to get that work done. On another note, the I-270 design build project is really starting to take shape. This project was awarded last November. It is the largest project active in the state. It was $278 million worth of work. There were some challenges during the initial meetings and design phase when you had to talk with groups that you've never met before and get people to collaborate with social distance, but they are on schedule. They are doing great. They a major closure or a ramp closure last week that people are seeing, and they have 4 more this month, significant closures that the public are noticing, including tearing down a bridge over 270 in the St. Louis region. So that's really going well. And that concludes my report for St. Louis.
Thanks, Mark. Now we're going to move to the Southwest District and Steve Camp.
Good afternoon. For the Southwest District report, I believe I'll highlight a couple of projects and one employee update. On the project side, the district is happy to report that we've recently decided on a location for our new interchange project on Highway 60 east of Springfield at 125. The new interchange will be just east, about a third of a mile from the existing intersection of those two roads. And with the pandemic, we had to do a virtual public meeting, but we were pretty impressed that we had over 200 responses from the public for a project in the rural portion of our district. So, and then the other project I wanted to point out was the I-49 Missouri-Arkansas connector. We are officially out of the starting gates on that one, and happy to report that crews are actively clearing and grubbing. On the personnel side, just quickly to note that our former area engineer, Danny Rager, has taken the resident engineer position in the Clinton project office, and his former duties will be split, at least temporarily, between my other area engineers. And I think that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And now finally, we'll go to the Southeast District and Andy Meyer, our Assistant District Engineer over Program Delivery, will give that report.
Good afternoon. I'd like to highlight the progress on the Exit 99 Interstate 55 interchange replacement. You may recall that this was awarded in January at a cost of $17.5 million. And at the time, there was some concern from the communities of Jackson and Cape Girardeau that the traffic impacts would be a negative feature of the project. Shortly after award, the project team got together with the contractor and performed a post-award value engineering study. And while the costs captured in that study were not particularly large, what they did identify was some efficiencies in the staging that would hopefully lead to less impacts on traffic. Our contractor, our maintenance department, our traffic department, and our construction and materials staff were able to work together to provide geometric improvements to alternate routes that really did reduce the impacts of the traffic changes on the traveling public. And we believe that, in combination with reduction in traffic volume related to COVID-19, has resulted in very minimal comments. Frankly, the comments have been predominantly positive on this project. At this point in time, they're about 30% complete, and that's about 10% ahead of the contractor's schedule at the beginning of the project. And so we're very pleased with that, and look forward to the completion of the project in fall of 21. That concludes our report.
Thanks, Andy. Now we're going to bring Brenda Morris, our Chief Financial Officer, up to go through the financial division.
Okay, presenting first for us is Todd Grosvenor, the Financial Services Director.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Financial Services has been working on analyzing the financial impact of COVID-19. Our state highway user revenue has been impacted greatly because of it. I reported back in April that the actuals compared to our projections were down about 19%, about $19 million. And that's our motor fuel taxes, our motor vehicle sales tax, and our motor vehicle and driver's license fees. The May report looks even worse, where those three components are down 25%, which is roughly $26 million. I strongly want to caution you, though, that the motor fuel tax, which represents about 45% of that state highway user revenue, we have not really seen the impact of COVID on that yet. That's collected at the distributor, which creates almost a little more than a 2-month lag. So we are not really going to know the full impact on the motor fuel tax until June report. And I expect that to be
to be a pretty big decrease. Just a warning there. Other things we've been working on is we've been working with Office of Administration to submit requests to get CARE Act money for our labor and supplies so far, which is about $3 million. And last item is Commissioner Waters already mentioned the audit. We're right on the verge of audit season, which will be very challenging with social distancing, but we'll make it happen anyway, however we need to get the audit complete this summer. And that completes my report.
All righty. The next division we have is General Services, and Debbie Rickard retired June 1, so I'm going to be presenting the report for General Services. One of the responsibilities of General Services is doing procurements, and I believe it was Ed the other day who said, well, it's hot now, so we need to start talking about winter. And one of the procurements that they are currently working on is that we've received bids for salt, and we're working with maintenance and the exec team to determine how much salt to purchase. The bids are comparable to last year, and there was good competition. Next, Beth Bring, our Information Systems Director, will be presenting.
Good afternoon. I have two updates for you this afternoon. The first one relates to our cybersecurity efforts. We have 3 new procedures that we have put in place. First, we are implementing a password complexity policy that not only requires that people create and maintain a more complex password, but we also check those passwords against a database to see if those passwords have been compromised. Secondly, for those individuals that are demonstrating risky behavior, online behavior such as clicking on a link, those types of things, we are sending them a notice and asking them to take cybersecurity training. And then lastly, on the cybersecurity front, we have figured out a way to very effectively push out critical cybersecurity patches in a remote fashion so that our employees no longer need to come into the office to hook up to our network to receive those patches. So we're real pleased about that. My second update relates to our continuing support of a record close to 1,500 staff that are working remote. If you'll recall, a few months ago when the rest of the world was scratching their heads trying to figure out how they were going to get all of their employees to be able to work remote, our information system staff, both in central office and out in the districts, very quickly and very effectively got 1,500 people set up. So I am extremely proud of the work that they have done and continue to do. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Beth. The last unit I'm going to be reporting on is our Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP unit. The state is currently upgrading their accounting, budgeting, HR, and procurement systems. We have established a unit for implementation, and this unit is led by Suzette Kemper. For the RFP for software, it was issued in January of 2020. The RFP closed April 15th in 2020. 9 proposals from 8 vendors are currently being evaluated, and the software contract is anticipated to be awarded sometime this fall. That concludes the updates from my divisions.
Thanks, Brenda. Now we're going to move on to Lester Woods, our Chief Administrative Officer, to talk about the administrative side of the house.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it. First up is going to be communications, and since Sally has retired, we're going to have our Assistant Communications Director, Matt Hebert, kick us off.
Thank you, Lester. As you can tell from our written report, the communications team has been extremely engaged in internal communications for employees and external communications to the public. But for my update this afternoon, I'd like to focus on our customer service performance. After comparing customer service call volumes over the past 3 months to previous years, we're seeing that call volumes are matching those from 2018. Flooding in 2019 skewed those numbers higher, so we're looking at 2018 for a more accurate comparison of volume. More significantly, response to our monthly customer service survey showed satisfaction numbers are even higher than previous years. We believe this demonstrates that even during these unusual circumstances, our customer service staff is not only performing at a high capacity, but meeting and exceeding our callers' expectations. And that concludes my report to the Commission.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Next up, we've got Rudy Nickens, who's our Director of Equal Opportunity and Diversity.
Good afternoon. A couple of things I want to point out. First, this period of physical distancing that we've been in for the last couple of months has provided us a chance to figure out new ways to keep people engaged. Social distancing doesn't have to be the answer just because we're physically separated. So we've switched almost all of our educational programs from stand and deliver classroom programs to web-based interactive diversity education programs. And they have been, the attendance with them has been over tripled what we'd ever seen in any classroom time. So people are highly engaged, attending the programs. We are trying to roll out at least one new one every week. So I really appreciate the response to the diversity education programs. They really are about making sure that we continue to make inclusion a centerpiece of our work. And even though we're separated from each other most of the time, being able to have a reason and an opportunity to check in on people, to be engaged, to listen to people, and to get people dialoguing with each other is a part of what we can offer, what we've been trying to offer here lately. The second thing I want to talk about is the Employee Advisory Council. The EAC has had lots of transition this year, so new officers will be picked next week at the monthly meeting. I'm excited, appreciate those people who stepped in the interim, and I appreciate the SMT members who have quickly responded to concerns as they have come in over this last 60 days. And then finally, the thing I want to point out is about the exit interviews. We've had, it's one of the only ways that we have these, one of the main ways we have this days of collecting data on employee engagements through the exit interview process. So a couple of numbers I want to point out is that in this last quarter, 73% of the people who filled out exit interviews marked that they were satisfied with their employment at MoDOT. And the top reasons for leaving now in order are better pay, better opportunity, retirement, career change, and benefits. 59% of those people who separated would recommend MoDOT to family and friends. And 63% have felt that they were treated fairly by management. If you ever, I really want to encourage each of you when people are leaving your divisions and districts to ask them to really take the time to fill out the exit interview. It's really important data, and even though it doesn't really affect their employment, it is good information for us and how we lead the organization. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Rudy. Appreciate it. Next up, we've got Steve Meister, our Human Resources Director.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Lester. On Monday of this week, June 1st, MoDOT implemented a new performance development tool called Engage 2.0. Engage 2.0 is already being utilized by other Missouri state agencies, but it is now a tool in our toolbox. We've trained supervisors. We have trained non-supervisory employees that are located throughout the state in divisions and districts to help with the implementation process and to answer employee and supervisor questions at the local level. We've also given optional training to all employees, made that available to them to help them understand Engage 2.0 and how we'll be using that at MoDOT. Engage 2.0 is a really easy to use tool for folks. It's got 4 main components or advantages. It provides framework for performance development conversations. It's got a growth model component that provides common and clear expectations to employees. It's got an evaluation tool that supervisors can use to give feedback to their employees. And it also has an upward feedback option. that allows employees on a voluntary basis to give feedback upward to their supervisors to help them become more effective leaders. Employees and supervisors have until the end of this month to complete the Engage 2.0 evaluations and upward feedback. And bottom line, we're really excited about having this tool available to us as part of our performance development process to help us engage the great workforce that we have working for MoDOT. That completes my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Next up, we've got Ashley Halford, the Assistant to the Chief Administrative Officer for Health and Wellness.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about employee health and wellness. I'm excited to say that we've got a wellness committee here at our central office that kind of directs the initiatives throughout the state for all of our employees. And they are working diligently to move the needle on employee engagement when it comes to health and wellness, and by offering many different activities and challenges. And those are going really well. I'm excited to report that we already have 176 members that have met the 3 requirements for the 2020 incentive to earn their incentive challenge for this year, which is more than half of what we offered or gave out in all of 2019. So it looks like we are starting to move that needle just a bit. On the medical plan perspective, with all the medical offices and hospitals and clinics closing, we definitely saw a reduction in medical claims over the last few months. That is something that we continue to monitor very closely. In addition, we are getting weekly reports from Anthem as far as the COVID testing and treatment for our members, because as you know, that can impact the plan and the medical claims experience pretty significantly. And we've been very fortunate with having very few positive tests with our membership, and we continue to monitor that on a weekly basis, as I said. Especially important as we start looking at the actuarial analysis, as we start getting ready to look at premiums and the process of planning for the 2021 calendar year with what the medical plan looks like. So those are all things that we're keeping our thumb on the pulse on and looking at. In addition to the COVID testing, just wanted to report that we did activate our emergency protocols with Anthem and MedImpact, our medical and pharmacy vendors, which allows employees to get their prescriptions filled sooner than normal. With Anthem, we are covering 100% of the testing and testing for COVID testing and the antibody testing, and that will continue through the end of the year. And we are covering 100% of all Live Health Online services, which is the telemedicine services offered through Anthem. That will continue through September 13th of 2020. And that concludes my report for the Employee Health and Wellness Unit. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate it. Ed, that concludes the admin team's report.
So now you've seen the run through of all our districts and divisions, and that is just a small fraction to give you an idea of what's going on in MoDOT. My report is we've got an awesome team of leaders that you saw here that represent an awesome team of leaders that are getting it done on the ground. So we're proud of everybody and what they're doing.
Thank you. Was there any questions or any comments on Patrick's report?
I just thought that was great. I love hearing from our staff folks, and with the exception of Jay's was maybe a little bit weak. I'd say we should do it every month, but I know I'd get run out of town. I know how much the staff love doing that. But Patrick, thank you for that. I thought it was good, and I also want to mention the SIT report, the written one that you sent us. I appreciated that too. So thanks to everybody that took time to plan and put together that report. It was great.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, the next item we'll move on to is an action item, consideration of bids for transportation improvements. And Travis Kestner is here to present those bids.
Yes, Chairman Briscoe, Commissioner, Director McKenna, I'm reporting for the May 15th, 2020 bid opening, in which MoDOT received 126 bids on 39 calls. With that, we recommend the following to you today. And that is to award all calls to the lowest responsive bidder except for call B01 in the Northeast District and C03 in the Kansas City District. We recommend rejection of B01 and C03 due to excessive bids per section 102.15 of the Missouri Standard Specifications. Those are our recommendations to you today.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve Travis's recommendations.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Patrick, do you have any comments on those, on the bids?
No, sir.
Okay.
Voice vote.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, ayes have it. Thank you, Travis.
Would you like a quick budget report?
That would be nice.
All right, for focus on bridges, first of all, we have 4 of those in the bid opening today, which we're just pretty well right on budget. That gets us to a total of 107 bridges for $104 million, which is $4 million over budget. We just kind of keep hanging in there from those early bridges that dealt with the Northwest flooding that kind of got us over budget there. This is the end of our fiscal year, so this wraps up fiscal year 20 with the total awards of $1.128 billion, which is 1.5% under budget. So really close to budget for that work. Districts have done a great job getting projects in and getting them out. The last time we've had a bid opening a year of that size was in state fiscal year 2010, and that's when we were still using those stimulus funds from the ERA Act. So with that, we've done around 269 bridges over the year and over 7,400 lane miles, and that's just classifying as asset management plus other work that's went on. So great job for all the districts at getting those jobs delivered and out there for the taxpayers. So
thank you, Travis. We appreciate that.
right, thank you.
Okay, next we'll ask Brenda Morris, the Missouri Department of Transportation. She's the Chief Financial Officer. Brenda, would you please proceed?
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners, Director McKenna. With July 1st just around the corner, today I'm seeking your approval for the fiscal year 2021 budget request. I'm going to highlight some changes that we've made as well as some highlights from the legislative session. The challenges that we face in the upcoming budget year are different than those in the past. The budget I'm presenting today assumes sufficient monies in all the funds to act on the appropriations provided to the department by the legislature. Recognize as we go into the fiscal year, we will continually monitor the balance of the department's various funds to ensure sufficient resources are available prior to incurring expenditures. The current situation is ever changing and we will continue to monitor it. I want to remind you how everything fits together. This puzzle piece graphic shows the 3 important financial documents the department has. Each serves a different purpose, but they all fit together and represents the department's blueprint for spending. The 3 documents include the financial forecast, which was presented to the Commission in January and is the foundation for the other 2 documents. The budget, which I'm presenting to you today, and the statewide transportation improvement program that details out the capital and operations plans for the department. We've made a few changes in the budget we are presenting to you today. These changes have been made to better align the budget with how we are organized and operating as an entity. The titles of the groupings have changed slightly. For example, you will notice we now have a category called Safety and Operations. Another change is that the amounts presented equal the amount approved by the legislature. This results in a more consistent and favorable way to operate our budget. One of the changes that occurred during legislative session, the General Assembly appropriated the fringe benefits separately by type.
Historically, these have been included as part of the individual budget categories, but we have separated them out in attachment 1 for consistency purposes. The appropriations request we took to the legislature include several pay-related items that would have increased personal services by $11.4 million and the related fringe benefits by $5.7 million. The items were requested to help mitigate salary compression issues and improve employee satisfaction and morale in relation to pay. The desired outcome would be improved employee retention and a reduction in those costs associated with employee turnover. The Office of Administration allowed departments to identify potential reductions that could be reinvested in new decision item requests for fiscal year 21. The department identified a total of $7 million to be reinvested in pay plan items. The $7 million included reductions of $2.6 million of personal services and $2 million of related fringe benefits and 15 full-time equivalencies. These voluntary reductions were included as part of the governor's recommended budget and was considered by the legislature. Ultimately, given the impacts of COVID-19 on the economy, no pay plan items were approved by the legislature. In addition, the Senate Appropriations Committee reduced the department's PS budget by an additional $1.4 million and 31 FTEs. And these reductions occurred in various appropriations. Safety and operations include the maintenance operations as well as motor carrier services and highway safety activities. Our appropriation request included 2 items. First, an increase to the appropriation in the amount of $6.2 million to pay for increased costs associated with salt that is used for winter operations. For fiscal year 20, we had seen a rise in salt prices by over 20% and expected that to continue. In addition, anytime we have a rough winter, more salt is used. Second, we requested an increase of $3 million for continued expenses associated with flooding repair. The total of $9.2 million was approved by the legislature and is included in this budget. Program delivery encompasses those activities associated with the construction program, including planning, designing, bidding, and constructing. In total, program delivery increased $88.5 million compared to fiscal year 20. Program delivery expense and equipment increased for a variety of reasons. A few of those included a need to increase spending on research to be compliant with federal law, to complete a new freight and rail plan, again to be compliant with federal law, and for other operating expenses such as the replacement of some lab equipment, some additional grants we anticipate receiving, capacity for driveway permit refunds. The program amount for program delivery also increased. This increase included funds needed for contractor payments because of movement of projects in the STIP. Specifically, you'll remember the I-270 North project was moved out a year, which results in the associated payments moving out as well. Increased costs associated with local pass-through projects, funds to expend grants we received, such as the Competitive Highway Bridge Program, and for expenses related to flood damage, roads, and bridges. The department has struggled to maintain its fleet. The investment in fleet has remained relatively flat for several years. The fiscal year 21 request asked for an increase of $14.6 million. This amount was determined by the department's fleet team and the work they did with an external consultant that identified the investment needed to keep our fleet at a better overall average age and condition. A funding analysis performed determined $145.8 million was needed. Our request was based on spreading that investment over 10 years. The General Assembly approved a $9.6 million increase for investment in fleet. These funds, if revenue allows, will be used to address life cycle replacement of the most aged pieces of fleet. Multimodal had a total increase in fiscal year 2021 of $54.2 million, which is the net effect of several increases and decreases. The largest increases related specifically to transit and aviation. The department received $61.8 million for non-urbanized transit providers as part of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act. In addition, the department also received $19.9 million for aviation grants, also from the CARES Act. For both programs, the funds can be used for operating and capital expenditures and is to help local providers continue to operate during the COVID-19 crisis. Amtrak, the passenger rail service provided between St. Louis and Kansas City, funded by general revenue, was decreased by $1.1 million. Those funds were redirected to improvements, repairs, renovations, and maintenance at the University of Central Missouri Max V. Swisher Skyhaven Airport. In addition, funds for port capital improvements were appropriated in the amount of $5.3 million. This is a reduction of $3 million compared to the amounts in fiscal year 20. For fiscal year 20, funds were appropriated at $9.4 million, but during the fiscal year there was a restriction of $1.1 million. With that, we are recommending the commission approve the budget as presented, and I would be glad to answer any questions.
You want to have any questions?
Brenda? I'm sorry. Brenda, this is Greg. Not really a question, but a comment. I'm glad to see the money included again for the continuation of employee pay plan. I can't even talk. And there is a new category for the fringe benefits, so all broken out. So I just wonder, you know, with the legislature taking the ease away from us in recent years, is there any concern really to you that we're trying to reduce the personal services or the fringe benefits?
You know, the reduction in personal services does make it more challenging for us, and we are beginning to see that. I've talked with the senior management team, and we've talked internally about that reduction in flexibility, and we are beginning to see that.
Well, I guess time will tell, but it's just frustrating, the worries, you know. Thank you, Brenda.
Brenda, I got a couple of questions. With the COVID-19, the reduction of travel and stuff, how often will this budget, I think, have to be updated or changed, or is there a strategic plan of how that's going to go forward?
The last I heard, there was the possibility that the legislature might come back and do additional work on the fiscal year 21 budget in a special session. I have not seen that. The governor has yet to sign the budget bills. At that point, he could make additional changes as part of that process. In addition, come July 1, the governor's office could, in addition to any actions they take when signing the bills, could also restrict funds. So all of those actions have yet to be seen. We haven't really had any additional conversations about any additional impacts to our budget at this time.
And specifically to, certainly our team will keep the commission informed if there are any adjustments that we need to make that require your authorization, but we're going to keep you in the loop on any revenue impacts or actions that we're taking to, it's one thing to have appropriation or spending authority. It's another to actually have the funds behind it in the road fund to be able to support the expenditures. So we'll keep you well informed, and if there are necessary adjustments on our side, we'll bring them to the commission on any given month for any type of action necessary.
Right, that would be in the form of a budget amendment, which we've done in the past on a regular basis.
Okay, then Patrick and I, it just seems odd to me that it sounds like we owe Amtrak money and the General Assembly is holding us hostage basically in the negotiations between. So at what point is Amtrak viable? But anyway.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. I think what the intent from the appropriators was to restrict the payments to push us to a once a day service, and I think once a day service will not necessarily be commercially viable. You will have had to, the benefit of that service is to go round trip in a day. You take it from St. Louis to Kansas City and come home. That's how a lot of people do use that, along with the longer, people coming, just passing through the state. So we're just a little bit concerned about it. We certainly understand there's a problem with general revenue. We understand that, but this is a long-standing issue, and I think these actions might end up costing us more in the long run until we fully liquidate the financial obligation, which I believe we still have about 18 years on the outstanding financial obligation of that 36 million. It was originally 50 million approximately, and we've paid down about 14.
Well, Mr. Chairman, on a more positive note, I just want to say thanks to all the staff for the reports, and everybody's doing a great job. It's really, it was really informational and kind of give you a feel for what's going on. I want to say thanks to Sally and Deborah for your years of service and doing a great job. I'm tired of Zoom meetings, as I'm sure most of you are. And then one little tidbit is go out and eat your eggs a day because it is National Egg Day.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, that's a good thing to know. I believe I will. Commissioner Brinkman, do you have any comments?
Sure. Is my audio working? Is the audio working?
Yes.
So, Patrick, on the congratulations on the award for the coin program. There, I saw that there were some other awards there. Could we get a copy and know what the other awards were? And was there anything there worth nobly borrowing or stealing from somebody else?
We are. That's a great point. I think we do as a department, maybe as well as anybody in the country, recognizing good ideas from anywhere we can find them and pulling them in. That's one of the great benefits of participation in the national associations, and it's really one of the intents that we do behind it. But yeah, we'll get you that list. That was a communications group. But there were some really fine projects, communications projects. A lot of them were specific to their states, but a lot of really creative work that was done in there. There were, I can't recall how many total award recipients there were, but there were some good, very good and worthy presentations.
Great. It'd be interesting to see that. And then Travis, I want to congratulate you on keeping all the bids under budget. Being essential has allowed us all to keep working here, and we've benefited from that. But we're chewing up $3 to $4 or $5 million a day out there, and I think what you'll see at the end of the year is that the bids will start getting cheaper. Everyone's busy now, but going into next year, we will have emptied our coffers. So I think we're going to get more benefit for our dollar there. My only other, okay, Ed, is Ed there?
Yes,
sir.
I'd like to congratulate you on your mask. I think it's wonderful. I have one just like it. I would just caution you that if you approach a stagecoach, they will throw money and watches at you.
That's all right. We need some money. We're kind of short.
And I hope that we get together again. This Zoom thing it's not too bad, but we miss you all, and I'm petitioning Pam to try to see if we can be sure to get the October meeting here. Have a nice dinner around the lake here. So good work, everyone. Keep up the good work. But we would like to see you all again in person.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Commissioner Waters, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, like everybody here, I'm very concerned about the state revenue, lack of state revenue, and I know that Patrick and the staff, everybody's working really hard on this, and I know as state employees, our employees are concerned about it, and my feeling is we need all the employees that we have. want to hang on to everybody. I know that we're going to have a stimulus come one of these days, and hopefully there's a lot of road and bridges and other projects that we're going to be able to work on, and we're going to need all our folks. So I appreciate that what the work that Patrick and the folks are doing to find ways to save money. I know it's tough for everybody that's cutting their budgets right now and digging and scraping to work to keep this thing going, but we're committed to you guys, and we got your back, and we're fighting for you, and all we can do for our employees, we're going to do it. So thank you for that sacrifice and the hard work during these difficult times. The only other thing I wanted to mention was we just came through Memorial Day, and Saturday is D-Day. So it's a good time to remember those that have sacrificed and those that serve our nation today. So thank you to our military folks and everybody that's helping to protect us in so many different ways. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Commissioner Smith? It's kind of hard to go last and next to last, but Ed, thank you for having all your districts and all your people get their reports together. They were very interesting. And Patrick, thanks for all your hard work that you do for us and everyone else at MoDOT. We're going to be all right on this sales tax deal. We're going to keep selling those cars and RVs, and that money's going to come flowing in, I hope. So I can guarantee I'm going to do my part on this end. And anyway, I want to Sally and Deborah, thank you for your years of service. Sally is one of the first people that I met when I got on the commission. Hadn't been on long, and she had me on a January morning, about 18 degrees, out on a pontoon boat. So anyway, but good luck to all of you on your retirement. And, we need to keep all of our MoDOT employees and our patrol and all of our law enforcement people in our thoughts and prayers at this difficult time. And I just had a text a while ago that the DeKalb County Sheriff Andy Clark was killed in a car wreck this morning on the way to assist one of his deputies. So I'm sure that Terry probably knows him, but he was responding to help out one of these guys. So anyway, it's a little tough time, but we're going to survive. We're all survivors here in Missouri. So thank you until we meet again. Pam, I'm ready to come to Jeff City. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Greg. I'll be very brief. I want to thank Patrick for his report. Where the other reports were included in it, I think that was very helpful. I appreciated that. I also appreciate Patrick's continued efforts with regard to the MPERS situation. That's something we really need to continue to work at and deal with. I appreciate everybody's efforts here, the staff, everyone that's been here and helped today. And I want to say, Terry, I think it's an interesting coincidence that National Egg Day is also the anniversary of the probably the 55th year since Billy Joe McAllister jumped off the Tallahatchie Bridge. Having said worthless things like that, I don't think I have anything. Let's see here. So before we adjourn, I want to note that our next meeting is scheduled for July the 8th this year. If there's nothing else, do we have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All opposed, say aye. Aye. Oops, all in favor.
Aye.
All right.
You can stay by yourself.
We're adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.